The envelope was sitting on the wrong side of the table. That was the first thing Lorena noticed when she door of the Aldridge conference room, carrying a fresh carafe of water and trying not to make a sound with her shoes on the marble floor. She had worked for Clifton Aldridge for 11 years. She knew how his office was arranged the same way. She knew the sound of his cough from down the hall, or the particular silence that meant he was angry rather than thinking. And the pale cream envelope with the gold wax seal, the one that had been placed with the morning gifts on the credenza near the windows, was now sitting at the far end of the long table, closest to where Renata Stokes had been standing 20 minutes ago. Lorena set the carafe down and told herself she was imagining things. It was his 65th birthday. The partners at Aldridge, Webb and Crane, had arranged the private celebration themselves. The reserved conference room on the 34th floor, the catered lunch, the small stack of gifts that were more ceremonial than personal. Clifton had told his assistant he didn't want a fuss. He said that every year. Every year the fuss happened anyway, and he sat through it with the particular patience of a man who had learned to accept other people's love even when it embarrassed him. He came in at 12:15, exactly when he always arrived at scheduled events. Not early, never early, and never more than 2 minutes late. His hair had gone fully white in the last few years, but he still moved like someone younger, unhurried but precise, the kind of presence that made rooms quiet without him asking. He shook hands with Webb, nodded to Crane, accepted the glass of sparkling water that Lorena offered because everyone knew he didn't drink at business functions. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "We wanted to," said Diana Webb, and she meant it. There were 8 people in the room. Lorena was not officially a guest. She moved along the edges, refilling glasses, straightening napkins, being invisible in the way she had practiced for over a decade. She was good at it. She noticed things precisely because no one was watching her notice them. She noticed that Renata Stokes laughed a half-second too late at everything, Clifton said. She noticed that Renata had positioned herself between Clifton and the credenza twice, now once to point something out the window, and once for no visible reason at all. And she noticed, for the second time, that the cream envelope was no longer where it had started. Renata Stokes had joined the firm 4 years ago as a lateral hire, a restructuring specialist with a list of clients that had made the partners genuinely excited. She was composed, well-dressed, excellent in meetings. She and Clifton had developed what looked from the outside like a warm professional relationship. She deferred to his judgment in the way younger partners deferred to founding partners, and he trusted her the way a man of his generation sometimes trusted competence, more than he should have trusted the person behind it. The lunch was served. People found their seats. Clifton settled at the head of the table with the easy authority of someone who had sat at the head of many tables, in many rooms, had learned that position was not the same as power, but that they often kept good company. The gifts were opened between the main course and dessert, as they always were at these things. A bottle of bourbon from Webb, a first edition from Crane, something legal history, Clifton's hands careful as he turned the pages. A card from the junior associates, signed by 17 people, which he read all the way through without rushing. The cream envelope was the last thing on the credenza. "That one came this morning," said Diana. "Courier's delivery. No return address. But the seal looked official. We thought it might be from the State Bar Association." Clifton reached for it. Lorena was at the side counter, her back half turned, pretending to organize cups she had already organized. She was watching Renata Stokes in the reflection of the window glass. Renata was perfectly still. Not the stillness of someone relaxed, the stillness of someone waiting. "Mr. Aldridge," Lorena said. She had not planned to say it. The words came out before she had thought them through, the way words do when something in the body decides before the mind catches up. Everyone looked at her. She was aware, immediately and acutely, of how she was standing. Near the counter, holding a stack of small plates, wearing the plain dark uniform that made her part of the furniture in rooms like this. She was aware that she was the only person in the room who had not gone to law school. She was aware that Clifton Aldridge was looking at her with an expression she could not immediately read. "I'm sorry," she said. Before you open that, sir, could you wait just a moment?" The silence in the room had a texture to it. "Lorena," said Diana, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone managing a situation. "I know," Lorena said. "I know. I'm sorry. She looked at Clifton, and she didn't look away, because she had decided that if she was going to say this, she was going to say it to him directly. I saw someone near that envelope. Earlier, while you were all still arriving. I should have said something then, and I didn't, and I don't know what's in it, but I've been standing here thinking about it, and I can't just stay quiet." The room held. Clifton Aldridge set the envelope back on the table. He did not put it down dismissively, and he did not clutch it protectively. He simply set it down and looked at Lorena with the full attention that she had seen him give to witnesses on the stand, the kind of attention that did not arrive with judgment already loaded. "Who did you see?" he said. Lorena's eyes moved briefly to Renata. It was not a long look, a quarter of a second, maybe less. But in a room full of people trained to read exactly that kind of thing, it was enough. Renata laughed. It was the right kind of laugh. Surprised, slightly wounded, calibrated to land as the natural response of someone being falsely accused. "Lorena," she said, with a gentleness that was worse than irritation, "I was standing near the credenza because Diana asked me to check whether the flowers needed water." "You can ask her." Diana frowned. "I did ask her that, yes." "I'm not saying you weren't there for a reason," Lorena said, and she was surprised at how steady her own voice was. "I'm saying you were also there for another reason. I saw what you did. I saw your hand move." "My hand move," Renata repeated. "On the envelope." The silence was of a different quality now, harder. "I straightened it," Renata said. "It was crooked. It was in a different position before you touched it." Lorena. This time it was Crane, older, tired-sounding, not hostile but unconvinced. "You're describing someone straightening an envelope." "I'm describing someone who was standing near a sealed letter addressed to the man we all work for, whose hand moved over that letter in a way I couldn't see clearly, and who has been watching him from the moment he walked into this room." She stopped. "Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I have worked for Mr. Aldridge for 11 years, and I have never once, in 11 years, interrupted a meeting. I'm interrupting this one because I don't want to be standing here in a week, wondering why I stayed quiet." No one spoke. Clifton was still looking at her. His expression had shifted, not toward belief, not yet, but toward something more careful than dismissal. "What do you want me to do?" he said. "Don't open it here," she said. "Not until someone's looked at it properly. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. And I'll apologize to everyone in this room, and you can let me go and I'll understand. But if there's something in that envelope that shouldn't be there..." She stopped again. "I'd rather you fire me for being wrong than stay quiet and be right." Renata set her water glass down with a small, precise click. "This is insulting," she said, and now the gentleness was gone. "Do you understand what you're suggesting? Do you know how long I've worked at this firm? I have a spotless record. I have clients who..." "Renata," Clifton said. She stopped. He said it the way he said everything, without volume, without heat. Just the word, and his full attention behind it. He looked at the envelope on the table. He looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "I'm going to ask you to open it." "Excuse me?" "The envelope. If you straightened it, you were close enough to know what's inside. I'm asking you to open it yourself and show us what's in there." The room was absolutely still. Renata's face did something complicated. It moved through several expressions very quickly. Surprise, then something colder, then a reconstruction of composure that almost worked. "That's..." "Why would I?" "Clifton, this is a courier envelope addressed to you. It's not mine to open. I'm asking you to. As a courtesy to me on my birthday, in front of colleagues. If it's nothing, we'll all move on. This is absurd." She laughed again, shorter this time. "I'm not going to open someone else's private correspondence because A." She stopped. Because A. She stopped before she finished it, but everyone in the room heard the shape of what she had not said. Lorena felt it land. She had expected it to feel worse. Clifton looked at Renata for 3 full seconds without speaking. Then, he looked at the envelope. He did not reach for it. Instead, he said, "I'd like to ask the room to stay, and I'd like to call building security up, and I'd like this envelope handled by someone who can tell us what's in it without any of us touching it further. Is anyone opposed to that?" No one spoke. Renata said, "I think this has gotten completely out of hand." "Maybe so," said Clifton. "We'll know soon." He took out his phone and called building security himself. Lorena stood at the side of the room and did not move. She was aware that her hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the specific exhaustion of having said something true in a room where truth required a toll to enter. She had paid the toll. She did not yet know what she had bought. The security officer who came up was named Bernard, a retired cop in his 50s who had worked the building for 6 years and was not easily rattled. Clifton explained the situation in 3 sentences. Bernard looked at the envelope, looked at the people in the room, and asked whether anyone had touched it in the last 30 minutes. "Miss Stokes did," Lorena said. "I straightened it," Renata said immediately, her voice tight now. Bernard nodded without reacting to either of them. He took a pair of gloves from his jacket pocket. The small kind, the kind Lorena recognized from enough crime procedurals to know they were not standard issue for a building security officer, and she filed that away without comment. And he lifted the envelope by the corner and examined the seal. "Seal's been broken," he said. The wax was intact, but the glue line beneath it had been separated and resealed, poorly with heat, so that the inner flap had a slight warp that would be invisible until you looked from the right angle. "It's been opened," Bernard said, and resealed. Diana said, "Oh my God." Crane said nothing. Webb said quietly, "Renata." Renata did not say anything at all. She had gone very still again, the same stillness Lorena had noticed in the window's reflection, but this time it was not the stillness of waiting. It was the stillness of someone whose calculation has run out of room. Bernard set the envelope on the credenza and called the non-emergency police line. While he was on the phone, Clifton walked to the window and stood looking out at the city. He stood there for a long time. Lorena wanted to give him privacy but did not want to leave, so she stayed near the counter and tried to take up as little space as possible. After a moment, he said, without turning around, "Lorena." "Yes, sir. How long have you been thinking about saying something?" She considered the question honestly. "Since I saw her hand move, so, about 45 minutes." He was quiet. "I almost didn't," she said. "I know. I kept thinking I might be wrong. I kept thinking about—" She stopped. "What?" She looked at the floor. "I kept thinking about the fact that I'm the one who carries the water in, and she's the one whose name is on the letterhead. And I kept thinking about what happens to people who say the wrong thing in rooms like this." He turned around. "You've been with this firm for 11 years, he said. "Your name is not on the letterhead, but you know what I know?" She shook her head. "Every lawyer in this room was thinking about liability and credibility and whether they had standing to speak. You were thinking about whether I was safe." He paused. "That's not a small thing, Lorena. That's actually the most important thing." The police arrived 22 minutes later, 2 officers and an evidence technician. The envelope was photographed in place before it was opened. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a document that had been modified. It was formatted to look like a letter from the State Bar Association, the kind that would be read quickly at a birthday lunch and not scrutinized. But the body of the letter, which should have contained a commendation, instead contained a fabricated complaint filed under Clifton's bar registration number. A complaint citing financial misconduct, specific enough to be credible and false enough to be devastating, attached with what appeared to be falsified client correspondence. It was the kind of thing that, opened in public with witnesses, on a day when he was surrounded by his colleagues, would have had maximum effect. A document that looked real enough to generate doubt. Doubt that, in a professional setting, tends to be sticky and hard to dislodge even after it's disproven. The technician dusted the envelope and the interior paper both. The letter itself had been handled with gloves, but the envelope's interior flap, the place you press when you reseal something, had a partial print on the adhesive surface, transferred through a glove that had a small tear at the thumb. Renata was taken to a separate room to give a statement. She did not give one. She called her personal attorney instead, which was, the officers noted, its own kind of statement. Clifton sat back down at the conference table. The birthday lunch was by this point entirely beside the point. Someone had cleared the food at some point during the confusion, and the credenza held only the envelope, sealed in an evidence bag now, and the stack of gifts that were ordinary in kind and from people who wished him well. Diana sat across from him. Crane was in the corner on his phone. Webb had stepped out and come back and stepped out again. "How did she get access to the courier system?" Diana asked, to no one in particular. "She would have needed to intercept the original delivery and replace it," Clifton said, "or send something that looked like a courier delivery in the first place. Either way, she had time to plan this." He paused. "This is not something someone does in a moment of anger." "No," Diana said, "it isn't." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "She's been with us for 4 years. I know. I thought." He stopped. He looked at the far wall. "I thought she was someone I could trust." "I know," Diana said again, because there was nothing else to say. The investigation that followed was methodical and eventually thorough. The original courier delivery had been intercepted in the building's mailroom early that morning. Security footage retrieved by Bernard before the police even asked for it, because Bernard was the kind of person who anticipated what was going to be needed and already had it. Renata's keycard showed a swipe into the mailroom at 6:48 a.m., 2 hours before most of the floor arrived. The fabricated document had been built over months. Investigators found earlier drafts on a personal laptop that was eventually recovered. There were emails. Indirect, careful, routed through an account she had been sure was untraceable, to a contact who had provided the falsified client correspondence, someone she had apparently paid through a consulting arrangement that had no actual consulting behind it. What she had wanted, as best as anyone could determine, was to remove Clifton from the firm before a specific client negotiations concluded. A restructuring deal, worth enough money to matter considerably, the kind of deal where removing the lead attorney at the right moment could shift who controlled the outcome. She had a financial interest in the outcome that she had not disclosed. She had been working the angle for 2 years. She had planned it carefully. She had gotten almost everything right. She had not planned for Lorena. The Bar Association, when contacted, confirmed immediately that no complaint had been filed under Clifton's registration number. The fabricated letter was entered into the record as evidence of criminal fraud and impersonation of a state authority, which carried its own weight in the legal proceedings that followed. Renata's attorney argued for a period of months that his client had merely sent correspondence and that the document found in the envelope was unrelated to her. The argument collapsed when the print from the resealed flap was matched, and then again when the consulting payments were traced, and a third time when the person who had produced the falsified correspondence, faced with his own exposure, provided a recorded account of the arrangement. She was disbarred before she was indicted. Clifton was back in the office the following Monday, which surprised no one who knew him. He did not talk about it extensively. He answered the questions that required answers and redirected everything else. He was not the kind of man who processed difficulty out loud, and the people who worked with him understood that and did not push. Lorena came back to work the Tuesday after the birthday lunch. She had taken Monday because her daughter was sick and school was out, and she hadn't mentioned that when she called in because she hadn't wanted to explain herself at the same time as everything else was being explained. She was in the break room, filling the water station, when Clifton came in. He did not often come into the break room. It was not his natural territory. She noticed him notice this about himself as he came through the door. A slight adjustment, a mild self-consciousness that she found unexpectedly human. "I wanted to find you somewhere quiet," he said. "This is as quiet as it gets," she said. He nodded. He stood for a moment in the way of a person who has prepared something and is now deciding whether it comes out in the order it was prepared. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "not in front of everyone. I thought you deserved to hear it privately." She had been thinking, in the days between, about what she would say if he said exactly this. She had not come up with anything good, so she said the true thing, which was, "I wasn't sure you were going to listen to me. I know. I thought about that a lot. In the 45 minutes. I imagine you did. I didn't know if you would believe me over her." He looked at her directly. "I believed you the moment I understood what it cost you to speak." She didn't say anything. "The thing about Renata," he said slowly, "is that she understood how institutions work. She understood that authority tends to protect itself, and that doubt moves faster than truth, and that the right document in the right room at the right moment could do a lot of damage before anyone thought to question it." He paused. She was right about all of that. What she didn't understand was that none of it works if someone who doesn't care about any of those calculations decides to simply say what they saw. Lorena thought about the 45 minutes. She thought about watching her own hand reach for the carafe and deciding, again and again, to stay quiet, and then not staying quiet. "I just didn't want to be wrong about someone I've worked for 11 years, she said. "You weren't. I know," she said. "I know that now." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out an envelope. Not sealed, not official. A plain white envelope with her name written on it in his handwriting. "This isn't compensation," he said. "I want to be clear about that. I don't have a category in my mind where what you did becomes a line item. This is separate." He held it out. "It's a letter, and something else. I asked Diana to help me figure out the right thing, and she had some thoughts." She took it. Inside the envelope was a letter, 2 paragraphs, written by hand on his personal stationery. The first paragraph said that in 11 years he had never once had cause to question her judgment, her integrity, or her commitment to the people she served. The second paragraph said that what she had done on his birthday, at personal risk, with no certainty of outcome, was the kind of thing that some people spend entire careers trying to build the courage for, and that he would not forget it. Behind the letter was a smaller envelope. Inside that was a check. It was more than she made in a year. She stood in the break room and looked at the number, and then looked up at him. "I know it's not enough," he said. "There's no version of enough that fits here. But I wanted you to be able to do something you've been waiting to do." Diana thought. She thought maybe you'd mentioned school, for your daughter. Lorena had mentioned it once in passing to Diana maybe 3 years ago. She had not imagined that it had been heard. "I can't take this," she said. "You can," he said. "And I'd like you to." She looked at the check again. There are moments in a life where the math of things, what you put in, what comes back, what disappears without acknowledgement, suddenly balances not evenly, not perfectly, but enough to mean something. Lorena had worked in rooms where other people's decisions were made for 11 years. She had carried the water and straightened the chairs and learned to be invisible in places where being invisible was a survival skill. She had spent 45 minutes deciding whether to be visible. And she had been. She folded the smaller envelope and held it against her palm. "Tell Diana thank you," she said, "for remembering." I will, he said. He left the break room the way he'd come in, unhurried, precise, making as little noise as he could in the space that wasn't his. She stood at the water station for a while after he was gone, listening to the hum of the building around her. All those floors of people making decisions about other people's lives. Her daughter's name was going on a college application in the fall. Her daughter, who wanted to study environmental law, which was the kind of irony that life sometimes produced when it was feeling generous. Lorena thought about telling her this story. She thought about the part where 45 minutes of silence had to be broken, and about how you explain to someone what it feels like to say a true thing in a room that doesn't expect it from you. She thought she would tell it simply, the way it happened, without making herself the hero or the sacrifice. Just, I saw something. I wasn't sure. I said it anyway, and it turned out that was enough.